What's up, and welcome back to the greatest teacher of all time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color to highlight their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and visit greatestteacherofalltime.com to help me support more great teachers like Miss Finch. What's up, Jaffany?
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. You said you were really busy because I know you're doing a lot of great things, but we still gotta highlight you.
I appreciate this moment. So, yes, I enjoy taking this time, of course, to be celebrated as one of the greatest teachers of all time. This is cool. Thank
There we
you.
go. Yep, you deserve it. So, just getting into all the great things you're doing. First off, you run your own micro school,
I
right?
do.
Can you
Yeah.
tell me about that? Like, what made you start? What do you guys do?
So actually, it's interesting because this term micro school kind of emerged recently after the pandemic, and it's become a little bit more popular. But I've been doing this now for over 20 years. I've kind of been always an old school type person, and so the idea of a one room schoolhouse with a mixed age group of students who are like family to each other and to me, it's just always been something that's been interesting to me. And I always thought it was a great environment for learning. So I've been kind of doing this for 20 years. And then recently I hear this term emerge of this micro school because before I would describe us as a homeschool. We're like a local group homeschool where I'm the instructor. And then I would have to add all of these things to that. So like we're like a homeschool, but it's kind of the same perks as traditional schools, but not the tradition of traditional schools. So I would have all those descriptions. So when I heard the term micro school, I said, that's perfect. That's exactly what we are. So like I said, I started in 2002. And we used to start with preschool students, and now we're just K through 12th grade. It's a group of awesome students. We call them the Finch kids. And they just are a group of families that come together and decided they wanted something a little differently in education. And my goal and my mission is just to provide that for them, to provide the atmosphere that those parents would provide if they could stay home from work. I love it. I literally enjoy every day. These students are awesome. And even when we have our tough moments, I enjoy pushing them and I enjoy being able to have this small group of students so that I can kind of hone in on each individual. So it's great. I love it.
Yeah, that is great. And jumping into what you were saying about how these students want like a different type of education, what is the Finch Academy about? Like, what makes you guys different from like a traditional public school?
Well, so I think the main thing, number one, is that we are family, and that I can pay attention to each individual student, to their likes, their dislikes, to their learning styles. And then it's a lot more. I was gonna say a little bit more, but it's a lot more relaxed in a sense than public school. The students have schedules that fit their needs. I have some students who come in and they're not morning people. So it's just like I would not give them their toughest subject in the morning, right? Because I want them to be great. And so then they may do something a little bit more relaxing in the morning and then choose to do like a tougher subject after lunch. Maybe after they're fed, they'll work a little bit differently. And so because our schedule is a lot more flexible than public school, I feel like it gives them, the optimal opportunity to succeed in whatever they're doing on that day. Outside of the schedule, their lesson plans, their curriculum is individualized. So if I have a student who loves technology and they just thrive in that way, then that's the direction I'm going to send their curriculum. While I do support like traditional and old school handwriting and things like that, and I will allow them to be exposed to all areas of learning or all styles of learning, I know that their biggest influence is going to be in the area that suits them. And so I get to know my students. Most of my students I've had now, for example, I have one student who's a 10th grader now, and I had her when she was 4. So I kind of know her learning style by now. So that's the advantage. And not to, I know public school teachers try to do the best they can in the environment that they're given. But I just kind of think a year or 10 months is not enough time to get to know someone and to teach them well.
Okay, so you guys were in school year round, or just you're talking about the multiple years of having the students?
Just the multiple years, yeah.
Got
Mhm.
you, got you. And so, yeah, talking about that one student you had from what do you say, 4 years old to 10th grade now?
That's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you do this by yourself, correct? Like you were like the main teacher?
I do it by myself, but I have other teachers who specialize in other areas. And so they'll come in, and sometimes that's a revolving, depending on their schedules, our schedule, and availability. It's just a part of my job is researching individuals who are passionate about different topics that I may not be passionate about. And if I'm not passionate, then how can I influence their passion? And so I will seek individuals who specialize in different areas, and then they'll have a time slot to come in to expose to students. So different teachers like STEM teachers, or maybe a foreign language teacher, or chemistry instructor, things like that. I'll have to kind of come in to influence students in that way. But for the most part, and for the core learning and curriculum, yes, I facilitate that process by myself.
Okay, man, and you're doing it. And you have 27 students, is that correct?
27, 24 in person and 3 virtual.
Okay, okay. And so I'm kind of curious. So these are 27 students, all different age groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that work in a classroom? Like,
Right.
what if the students like on algebra and the others like doing their smaller numbers? Like, how does that work?
Right. And you're exactly right. That is an exact situation that we're in right now. And a lot of times parents, especially when I get new families, they'll ask, how are you doing this? And if it weren't for kind of the word of mouth, um, advertising that my Finch families who've been here for a while that they were doing, a lot of people wouldn't believe it's possible, but they hear the results, they see how intelligent the students are and how engaged and how much they love their school. So it's working. I would like to say, I had some type of formula or magic, like and a lot of people are like, how do you do it? Or especially if I meet a new micro school owner who's looking for tips and things like that. But I call it our song and dance. We kind of know our rhythm. And the schedule, I'm tweaking it always just to make sure I am my best self, and I'm serving them in the manner that they should be served. But really, it's all in timing. We have time blocks where I know this is the time where my older students are working independently. So it'll give me some time to kind of connect with my younger students. Or if there is a project that my younger students are working on, then I know that I can provide services to my older students. And really, it's just because I don't teach using a lecture style. So is very few times I'm standing in front of a class giving a lecture. And I think, that is kind of the key to me being able to get to know my students, because most often I'm sitting with them. I'm in the space. I'm hearing, the areas that they need some push in. And so because of that, I think it gives me time to kind of swap out when this group is working, independently, then I can kind of go with another group. And because I have older students, I'm training them to be leaders. And so there are certain things that they will have to actually engage with the younger students. They know this already. They've been doing this for years. And so we sit together and we'll have a meeting. And I call it my leadership team. What they don't know is they're all on my leadership team. but but they love being called something, right? So I'm like, this is my leadership team. You're responsible for issuing this lesson to my younger students. Now, of course, there's time where I'll have to come follow up and make sure that there are no gaps or things like that. But they've been doing this what we call the Finch way. They've been doing this the Finch way for years, and so they are experts on this method. So I utilize that leadership opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's great. You got to get the Finch way patented like that. That sounds like it might
Right,
be something serious.
right. I should do that. You're right.
Really, really. Yeah, because I remember when I was in school, I think we were in third grade and we had
Mhm.
big buddies in like the sixth grade. Where, like they would come
Yeah.
and like do crafts and like read to us and stuff like that. Sounds exactly what you're
Exactly.
doing, right?
It's exactly what I'm doing. And to be honest with you, a lot of times, if you can imagine a student sitting with their teacher, there's a little pressure there, right? But then if you're sitting with a buddy, they get that lesson so quickly, and all I have to do is kind of follow up and make sure that they've mastered it, because our promise here is mastery. We don't move on until you've mastered it. And so if I have a student who's done, like I set up different games and things like that, and I have a ninth grader or an eighth grader who loves to do that with the littles while I'm over here doing algebra with someone, and like I said, we're a family. And so they help their little buddies is what we call them. And then the little buddies love working with the bigs. And so it's a song and dance, and it's working.
Man, I love that. I love that.
Awesome.
And getting into like the individualized education, you're doing these different things at the school. You also have a school podcast, right?
You do, yes.
Yeah. Hey Ma, tell me about that.
Hey, Ma. So, what I noticed in my classroom, especially as my students who've been here for a long time, as they started to grow older, their issues got older. And so I was used to, having students kindergarten through, let's say, third grade. And it's like, he took my ball, right? That was the biggest issue I had to deal with. Or I'm trying to tie my shoe, or I need a snack, right? And so as those third graders became middle schoolers, and now even going into high school, and they started talking about different issues, I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on, you need a moment to get this out, because a lot of times those issues would come up in the middle of a math lesson, or while you're supposed to be creatively writing, or whatever you're doing at that moment, and it was interfering with your greatness at that time, right? And so my theory was, if I give you a platform to present your thoughts and your ideas and your concerns. And this platform was just to let you know that those thoughts, ideas, and concerns were important, and that other youth, in the world was experiencing these same things. Then I thought, it's kind of like, I'm doing two things at one time. There were also times where I would try to dig a little deeper emotionally, because one of my main theories as an educator is that I have to connect to my students. I just have to, because they have to trust me in order for this to work. And so if they're holding in issues or feeling like they can't communicate to me, that was a huge hindrance. And that's what I noticed is a huge hindrance. Even in education, everything is so rushed. And it's like, you get in here, you do your work, you got to go. And I'm like, let's slow down a little bit and let's take the time, because when else are they communicating? When else are they saying what bothers them? And we have to educate the whole child, not just, this core curriculum. So that's how Hey Mom was developed, I should say.
Yeah, and I love it. And I've heard almost all the episodes already.
Oh,
But,
awesome.
yeah, I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thanks. Thank
But
you.
you guys talk about things like what makes a good friend, trusting your parents, and just different type of struggles they have going on. Can you tell me the importance of those types of conversations on a public platform?
Yes, and I thought about that as well, because some of the issues we discuss are very personal.
Yeah, like I was listening to one I think a few days ago, and it was about like communicating to both your parents equally, like after the
Yeah,
divorce or split. So like
yeah,
a conversation like that online, is that
right,
ha-
right. Here's why I think is important. First of all, the students who are involved in the podcast, they're typical middle school students. And if you realize, like, or I don't know if you kind of heard the conversation, if your parent picks you up from school, oh, how was your day? It was fine. That was it. That's it. Now, all this stuff that happened in your day, it's like, it's fine. And parents like, oh, okay, good, right? Because as parents, I'm a parent myself. And so what I feel, this public forum not only allows other parents who are not connected to the Hey Mom pack, well, the Hey Mom students, should I say, or Finch Academy students, it allows them to hear what middle school students are going through, and then hopefully encourage them to dig a little deeper, hearing these other situations. And then also other students hearing, oh, I'm not by myself in this situation. Here is a group of students who have the same issue that I've had. Maybe I should go tell my parent about this, or get some help. Or I see how we were able to resolve that within that episode of the podcast. So maybe there is help, and maybe there is a solution. So the public platform is really just so that the ideas that I have to connect to students kind of are spread a little bit more vastly. They're going into homes and families, and moms and dads are digging a little deeper.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. So yeah, I guess it is another good way to have just parents and adults know more about what their kids are really thinking about. Yeah. And so
Yeah, yeah.
it's another thing too, where like you hear about teenagers like abusing the internet or sharing too much on there. But I really applaud how you're doing this in like a supervised, responsible way.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. And that is important. What I tell my students always, we have a phrase, and I've said it a couple of times on the podcast, is your goal in life is to represent yourself well. And that's what we say. So you don't have a goal to be anybody else, to be like anybody else. Other goals that are set before you, some of them may be obtainable, some of them may not, but your goal is always to represent yourself well. And so even when we're talking on the podcast, it's a training opportunity for the group of students who I have involved, just to let them know that I want you to think about how you actually feel, because kids sometimes they'll say something because they're angry or they're hurt or they don't understand. And it's not really what they really feel, And so we talk about that a lot. So being responsible online and representing yourself well is very important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. At one of my previous schools, I helped start the school podcast. And one of the big things that we had to work on was having a conversation, like
Mhm.
having a back and forth dialogue. How do
Yeah.
you approach that? Because middle schools, I was at high school. So middle
Okay.
school students, I can imagine. How do you go about facilitating a conversation between young people and making sure it's not your voice overpowering and getting their thoughts out?
Right. And that's something that we are learning together. Outside of recording the podcast, we have meetings with the group of students who are involved. And these meetings give them an opportunity to feel comfortable hearing their voice and understanding, and where I affirm that what you just said was great, right? Or I understand that. You said that well. They get opportunities away from the mic to hear that, oh, I am making a little sense here. People should hear what I have to say. Even the advice that they give each other is great. We're trying to gear up. This was our inaugural season, should I say, and we learned a lot during that time. We're gearing up to start again, and they are so much more confident now. In the beginning, it was I said, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? Or I'll bring up something that came up in the classroom, and then they would let me know. Now they're ready. They got their list going. We need to talk about this, 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 and this. But I think an important part, especially with middle schoolers, is taking away the shame of their voice, letting them know that they have something important to say. And because I'm a person in their village who they look up to, giving them that affirmation is very key to me. Because whether the world tells them they're not enough, or what you have to say is silly and things like that, I feel like personally, if I give them enough affirmation, it'll drown out anything else that they could possibly hear.
Yeah, yeah. And like that's something we do in the classroom too. Like if we're trying to get a student to share their thoughts, you
Yeah.
affirm them or let them know,
Yeah.
hey, I like what you have to say. It's really good. Keep going. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's great. I mean, I think all classrooms need that, or there needs to be an opportunity for students to hear that, especially even with mistakes. Kids are so hard on themselves, about mistakes. So I tell my students all the time, I literally, not to my detriment, but I highlight my mistakes because I am someone who they feel like have it all together and doing this and doing that. I'm their teacher. They of course think I'm smart because they think I know all of it. But then when I make a mistake, I let them know, oh gosh, guys, I messed up there. I got to go fix that. Because if they're, the strict kind of traditional school says, you study this week, you do your work, you turn it in. If you don't, it's a zero. And then, oh, if you don't do well in this test, then your whole grade. So they're hearing that, mistakes aren't okay. And so I feel like if we let them know you can make mistakes because you will. But then the next step is, okay, let's see how we can fix it. Let's see if it can be fixed. If not, let's move on and try again next time. All of those things are important for them to hear. And so I do think that's important in the educational space.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really, really. Wow. You're doing it. All this stuff
Thank
with your
you.
school inside the classroom, but you're also doing some things outside the classroom, right? uh
Yeah.
Yeah, so I met you at the homeschool conference and you
Mhm.
were telling me that you're going to start your own retreat. Can you tell me?
Yeah. Yeah. So our classroom space is, like I said, it's like a one-room schoolhouse, so to speak, but we sit on a little over 2 acres of land. And I noticed that, especially like I said, after the pandemic, we did a lot outside. There were classrooms, well, I should say, like discussions that we were having on the hammock or in the trampoline or just on the playground area, on the back deck, things like that. And so what it showed me, while at first I was concerned about the productivity there, like, would you be focused? You know, is the butterfly flying by going to distract you from your math problem, or working on the trampoline? Will you decide to get some jumps in the middle? And even so, if so, that's fine, you know, as long as you're reading your goal for that moment. But it did allow me to see that they were actually more focused. The opportunity to choose these outdoor spaces was like exciting to them. You know, we have a flexible seating plan here in our classroom, but you know, it's only so much you could do. And so when a student asks, "Can I go work in a hammock?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can. Like, that's a great idea. Let me go do that. Let me teach this class from the hammock." Or you know, the group discussions that we have on the back deck. And so my goal now is to transform our outdoor space to what mimics, you know, the look of an outdoor retreat, with waterfalls and walking paths and just different, more determined areas or specific areas for working, because now they have this. I mean, it's the vast land and they're very creative with it. And I do want to leave some space for that creativity. But I think as I grow as a micro school teacher, I'm even learning what's important. And, you know, while their curriculum is important and their growth academically is important, to me, as equally as important is their security in this space. Um, Equally as important is making sure that I try to remove as much of the stress that I can, because kids get stressed too. And the issue is we don't hear enough about their stressors. We don't transform their environments. If you imagine like a workspace, if you go into corporate America right now, there's different things around. Like, I went to one co-working space, and they have a massage room or like a snack bar, just different, like, great things that corporate workers need to just kind of chill out a little bit and not focus so much on the work. But then you walk in schools and it's like you might get a water fountain or like you know, like, and I'm like, what is this? What is this environment that we're telling them they are to look forward to in the world? I don't want that. I don't want it. I
Yeah,
want
because
them to expect to be catered to.
yeah, because that's so interesting. Because like if you think of like a retreat is made to like relax your mind and also grow too. That's why it's like the peaceful scenery
Yes.
and everything. But like the
Yes.
traditional classroom does not look like that at all.
At all. At all. And then I think it's so counteractive because um, I think a part of my goal for creating this space for my students is because of my own personal, I think, occurrences and things that happen along my educational path. I was always, you know, somewhat at the top of my class, but not without stressors. I was stressed and I felt like I had to reach these goals. And then I also, to get into this top college, I had to, you know, do this and had to do that. It was just a lot of stress unnecessarily, because now I'm looking at my life and I can't tell you where my college degree is. It might be in the box at my mom's house. Like, but, and I'm not saying don't get a college degree. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the things we allow to stress ourselves and the things that we put into place to become these goals that are driven. And it's like, at what cost? Let's take a look at them and see if we can do that a little differently. And we're teaching our students to start that early, and then wondering why there's so many different mental health issues in the workplace when they're adults, because we taught them that. That's what we taught them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to do it a little differently. And so the retreat is to let school be a place that they enjoy visiting and that they are calm. And a lot of my students are also student athletes. And so, you know, they do a lot away from here that maybe stress them out a little bit, you know. And I'm not saying all stress is bad stress, but if I can eliminate a good bit of it, I'm going to try.
And that's the key. And finding
Yeah.
someone who cares to eliminate that little bit of
Yeah.
stress, you know?
Yeah.
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 So maybe just to be clear, this retreat you're setting up is more like a retreat environment for school. Is that correct?
It is. And then it will also allow spaces for us to invite students who are not necessarily enrolled in our program to just come. And because even with the One of the goals that we have here is building a space for our podcast because right now we go off campus to do the podcast. And so then we'll be able to invite other students who aren't in public school or, who are homeschooled in their own homes with their families who have a voice as well, who can experience the retreat and have discussions. And a major part, a little bit of my background, I studied child psychology at Emory University. And so my junior year, I was doing an internship with a psychologist, and it just so happened to be around the September 11th tragedies. And one of the families that was there was a grandchild who was with his grandparents, but his parents were directly affected by the tragedy. And I spent the entire session crying with this child over his experiences and all of that. And so the doctor is looking at me like, you have to stop that. You can't cry during the sessions. But I realized then, like, therapy may not be the direction I need to go in. But there's still a bit of a therapist in me. And so I feel like because of that, I use a lot of that in my methods of teaching and my methods of creating a space for children. And so while
And
I may not,
little side note too,
yeah,
in the Hey Ma podcast, you can definitely hear your side.
can you? Yeah.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah, it's in there. I can't get it out. Even some of my students, like I said, they're middle schoolers and they're great, but sometimes they'll tell me something and it'll send a signal in my brain. I'm like, hold on. And so then I'll ask a deeper question and they'll go, oh, here she go.
Yup, you're definitely I felt it. I felt on a
Yeah,
couple.
I can't help it. I can't help it. But I think all of that hopefully is creating a space where they know they matter, and they know changes occur based on their needs. And that is what I think is missing in the traditional school system. It's a system, and it doesn't matter who's participating in it. It doesn't matter the needs of the participants. It's just, this is the system. You either fit or you don't. And then instead of creating a system based on the needs of the participants, then you create systems to isolate those who needed something differently. And the isolation is not necessarily celebratory either. And so that is where I think if you switch those funds a little bit and don't pay for the isolation, but pay to kind of create a space where every child is celebrated, I think it'll be a little bit more productive than they think.
Yeah, really, really. Wow.
Yeah.
Miss Finch, you're doing it. You
Thank
really,
you.
really are.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But your micro school, everything you're doing with it, your podcast platform, Hey Ma, plus this retreat you're setting up are all
Mhm.
part of the reasons why I think you might be one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's you know what? I call it my cross to bear. And I love it most often, but it is definitely a cross to bear. Sometimes it gets heavy. But moments like this, and moments where my students appreciate things that I'm doing, it just makes it all worth it. So thank you for this platform and for this moment to celebrate what I'm doing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. And you deserve all appreciation. And
Thank
with the support of Transcendence Children Family Services, we actually want to give you this $100 prepaid gift card to use with you or your
you.
students or anything you choose.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will definitely add that to the funds that we're raising right now to develop this retreat. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
There you go, Miss Finch. You deserve it. You deserve it. And also, with the support from an anonymous donor, they actually want to sponsor you with a class pizza party for you.
Awesome. They'll love that. They love pizza.
Yeah, everyone
Thank
does, right?
you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So once the cameras go off, I'll get your address and everything and figure out how to get these pizzas and the gift card delivered to your school.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah. And
Yeah.
kudos to what you're doing. You get to meet some awesome people. If you're on search for the greatest teacher of all time, I'm sure you've met some awesome people. And so this is great. It's a great platform. I really love this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I definitely had meeting some cool teachers, having great conversations, and sharing with other people too. I think that's the most
Yeah.
important part.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone else for watching The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I interview teachers of color tied to their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you really like the video, leave a comment for me and Mrs. Finch to see. Also, if you are the greatest teacher of all time, or if you know the greatest teacher of all time, let me know. Go to greatestteacherofalltime.com and click on Submit a Teacher. Hope to see you soon.